You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Happy to have you with me here today on this Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday, where we're actually going to take a step back and do a second show on what to eat for your unique body type. And today was supposed to move down the line from diet, which we did last week for the Ayurvedic doshas and body types, onto exercise as part of my de-stress-based protocol of what we use in my private concierge practice with our private wellness clients. But there were so many questions still on what to eat, how to develop meal plans, that I listened to you. I heard what you had to say inside our CabralSupportGroup.com and over Instagram. And again, this podcast is really for our community. So whenever you do need more clarification, I understand that and it makes total sense to me. So we're going to step back. We're going to do a second show today that actually goes in depth on not necessarily the foods to eat, because I spoke about that last week. I gave you a food list. So I'll link back to last week's show on that, but to go over your meal planning. I want you to know what types of food, meaning like the overall warming foods or cooling foods, and how much to eat for each body type. So we'll go through the Vata, we'll go through the Pitta, and we'll go through the Kapha. But not only that, we're going to be speaking about something that's even more important, and that's understanding that where you're at right now is going to be different, most likely, than when you become balanced in 3 months from now or 6 months from now. So I'm going to talk about that. I'll get to that in just a moment. But what I want to do is go over one of the main tenets that seems to be confusing people. Okay, so I want you to understand that your dosha is made up of so many different things, because the dosha, meaning Vata does not just mean ectomorph. Vata, or Pitta or Kapha, Pitta being the mesomorph and Kapha being the endomorph. Remember, these are qualities. So these are life forces that Ayurveda is talking about. It doesn't mean body type. Dosha does not mean body type. I really want to talk about that. You and I are going over the body type as characterized in Ayurvedic-based medicine. But what I want to explain is that dosha actually refers to the specific quality of something as well, the life force. So the season, for example, right? Seasons. When we talk about more of the wet time of the year or moving into the heat, we're talking about late spring into summer for Pitta, right? And then we're moving into Vata-based stages and the Kapha-based stages with a cold. So I'm going to go over that in the future. That's why I don't want to confuse it today. But what I want you to know is that we're focusing on not the mental constitution of someone, okay? We're not focusing on whether you have a Vata-based mental constitution. We're not talking about the Pitta-based constitution. When I eat, I don't eat for my Pitta-based mentality. I eat for my specific body type, right? And I eat based on where it's at currently and how I'm trying to balance it. It's so much more important because remember, your psychology oftentimes is a byproduct of your physiology, and it can go vice versa. I don't disagree with that at all, which is why we have 2 specific Ayurvedic shows coming up dedicated to your mindset. There's no doubt about that. We live in a Vata-based society, and when you look at that, you have to understand that the stress, the overwhelm, the anxiety, well, those are part of the Western-based mentality that we have, the industrialized basis or nation that we have. So always keep that in mind. That does not mean just because you're always talking fast like I do, right? Or you're always moving fast, that means you're a Vata. No. That means that your mental constitution can be more Vata. But if you try to eat a Vata-based diet for a Kapha-based body type, you're simply going to put on a lot of weight. It doesn't make sense. Just because it might balance your overactive mind does not mean that you should be eating the Vata-based diet. That's the confusion that a lot of people are teaching right now. And I know it's well-intentioned, but it's still incorrect. And that's because, and this was very important, not all doctors that I learned from as well understood Ayurveda at the deepest levels. So when I spoke with them, I got to see, like, really being overseas and being in these clinics, it made sense that we balanced a lot of the lifestyle with the Vata-based mentality, but we still fed people based on their physical constitution. And the reason is, especially when I was in Sri Lanka, that a lot of people were there to lose weight, and it did not matter their mental-based constitution for the weight loss-based nutrition that we gave them, okay? Like that was really, and it's plant-based. I'm going to be talking about that in a moment and why, right? Very, very different than other types of body types. It did not matter. I want to repeat that. It did not matter their mental constitution at the time. We fed them based on helping them with an endomorphic or kapha-based imbalance to help them lose weight. So we gave them heating foods, a lot of spices, a lot of plant-based diuretic, natural diuretic-based foods, and it worked incredibly well. In the future, I'll be offering a lot of these spice-based capsules as part of a natural weight loss-based formula, but it will never be, I will never tell you that you're going to find weight loss in a pill. I will never tell you that. That is against my ethics, right? As a naturopath and as a naturopathic doctor, and really as any type of doctor, you should take an oath, and you do, that says you will do no harm. But I believe there should be a second one that says you will not mislead people into believing that results can come from not changing multiple things in life. So what we did for the Vata-based mentality is actually a relaxing-based massage. We did some sauna heat-based treatments, but we did something called Shirodhara as well. And I'll be talking about that in the future when we talk about the rest-based portion of the de-stress protocol. So stay tuned for that. They're all coming. I do want to stay, though, on the meal planning today because I want to keep this a shorter podcast. I know they've been a bit longer, but I know that I want these to be digested in one sitting, right? So I want them to be no more than 30 minutes or right around that mark, at least for the Ayurvedic shows. So Shirodhara, though, is an Ayurvedic treatment used to calm the Vata-based mind. It's an amazing treatment, not done very typically in the United States, but you can find some centers that do it. And if you have an overactive mind, if you are anxious and you want to do a day of relaxation and include some Shirodhara, it can be absolutely incredible. I will talk about that in the future. For right now, let's get back to the meal planning. You do have to understand is that we are providing nutrition plans based on physical constitution of the dosha, not the mentality, not necessarily an ailment, although ailments, of course, go with the body because it's an imbalance. If you're suffering from rheumatoid arthritis right now or degenerative-based disease, well, that's more of a Vata-based disease. I worked with an incredible doctor in the north of India, who I do plan to go back and just basically work with him in his clinic in the future. And I hope to be able to lead a group one day as well. But we did some incredible work there. And so when I was talking to him, I'm like, I want to know the language of Ayurveda because I go in depth with functional medicine and bioregulatory medicine and orthomolecular medicine, all the kind of state-of-the-art based medicines. But what does Ayurveda call rheumatoid arthritis? Because although it certainly was not common thousands of years ago because they didn't have the level of toxicity that we do now, certainly intestinal permeability could happen back then. They didn't have the antibiotics, but people could still get it, right? So there are many reasons for that. Again, I'll talk about that more in the future as well. But what they referred to it not as rheumatoid arthritis, right? Because that's not a possibility. But they referred to it as Vata Ama. So if you go back and you study Ayurvedic medicine, and you really go in depth, this is not something you can learn. I want you to be fair to yourself and fair to Ayurvedic medicine. If you believe you can learn Ayurvedic medicine in one book or a couple months of study, it's not going to happen. It will happen over years. Now, that doesn't mean you can't start using it within months. You can, of course, you can. That's the whole point of me even doing these podcasts. But if you want to be a practitioner of Ayurvedic medicine, it's living it, it's breathing it, it's studying it. It's the most amazing form of medicine, but it's also the most in-depth. There is not a form of medicine. It doesn't matter. It honestly does not matter, conventional medicine or not, that's going to be more in-depth than Ayurvedic medicine. And the reason is this. It takes into account the whole person, literally the entire constitution. But not only that, it takes into account the seasons. And it's unbelievable. But when going back to rheumatoid arthritis, you can understand why it would be called Vata Ama. Because it's a degenerative, which means catabolism, which means breakdown. And I'm going to tie this in just a moment. With ama, and ama means toxicity, okay? So it's the ama, it's the toxins that are creating the catabolic breakdown. And we know that now. It's the bacteria that gets into the cells that we're seeing this right now that's causing an autoimmune reaction. And autoimmune doesn't mean mistake. I want to clear that real quick. Autoimmune does not mean a mistake by the body. That's what conventional medicine has led us to believe. At best, according to them, it can be molecular mimicry, which I don't disagree. And that means basically the body is attacking cells or tissue that looks like another toxin or structure that has been marked, right, for destruction. But also we're finding these things called nanobacteria, which are bacteria that are now trapped in cells. And I've done this, and I've already gone over this in depth. If you go and you type in rheumatoid at stephencabral.com/podcast, you'll actually see me go in depth on this. But you'll see that the immune cells actually programs a specific type of cells called CD8 cells for cellular destruction. Basically, it marks cells, your own natural tissue, to be destroyed. So the cells go through something called apoptosis, which means programmed cellular death. That's supposed to happen because if it didn't happen, well, then cells would become cancerous all over the place. Well, this happens to a greater degree with rheumatoid arthritis or autoimmune degenerative-based issues because the body, in many cases, has found bacteria in those cells and has programmed them for cellular destruction. The cell breaks down. Now, the cleanup crew can go in the macrophages and even CD4-based immune cells to clean up the debris now from those cells that have basically imploded, that have come apart. The immune system can now clean it up. I mean, it's an unbelievably intricate system of the body. We still do not fully understand how this human body works, right? 100 trillion plus bacteria cells in our body, 40 trillion plus cells in our entire body. We don't have it all mapped out, but we know a lot and we know how to help people get well. That's the most important thing. All right. So why did I mention all of that? Well, why I mentioned it is that some of the rheumatoid arthritis can be suffering from more of a vata-based disorder. And so that is the Vikriti. Understand this, that your Vikriti means where you're at right now. It's your phenotype. It's what you become, okay? So in our practice, what we're typically giving people is 12 to 16-week Vikriti-based plans. We don't call them that. We just call it, this is your personalized wellness plan for the next 12 to 16 weeks. Here's what it entails. After 16 weeks, you're most likely going to move more towards your balanced genotype plan or Prakriti-based plan in Ayurveda. That means your dosha. That means your balance. Because if you need to lose 20 pounds, well, within 12 to 16 weeks, we can help you lose that. If you need to get well, fix your digestive issues, about 12 to 16 weeks, we're going to help you with that. With autoimmune, you'll be hopefully symptom-free by that time, but of course, it's going to take a little bit longer to help regenerate the body. But again, symptom-free. So that's what we hope for. Again, we don't cure disease. Naturopaths don't cure disease. We don't treat disease. What we look at are the underlying root causes, keeping you in balance. Like that's the bottom line. Is it heavy metals? Is it candida overgrowth? Is it SIBO? Is it any number of things, viruses? We're going to look at those things. We're going to give the body the raw materials that it needs. And then we're going to help your body then have everything that it needs to balance itself. Like that's the important thing to look at. It's deficiencies that we just talked about and it's toxicities that we help to remove. That's what we'll be teaching thousands of practitioners in the future to do. I do not want this to be my work. It's not even my work. My work, like if I have one job, it's going to be continuing to assimilate the best work in the entire world, the best practitioners from hundreds of years ago and thousands of years ago, take their work, continue to update it, and continue to allow other practitioners to then work with thousands of people themselves. I'm one person that can do maybe 1,500 to 2,000 appointments a year, okay? That's the most I can do personally. My team, about 20,000 appointments a year. And by working with other practitioners, thousands of them, well, we can take that now to maybe 100,000 or more one-on-one appointments per year. That's my goal. That literally for me, and then also getting at least one person per family kind of trained in this type of natural health, is that's how we make a difference. You know, it's called the butterfly effect. Understand that what you do, even just teaching, put it out there on social media, whatever it means, like it might not seem like a big deal to you, but it reaches one other person, they tell one other person, and it's a snowball effect, right? Because that one other person might tell two people, and then they each tell two people. No big deal, but we're already now at 8, and you can see how that starts to multiply. That is the reason why I've started to get more into posting on Instagram and all of those things is I actually enjoy it. I enjoy connecting with people, but I understand that it's a platform where people can repost content and share it with others. And whether they give me a credit or not, honestly, sure, it'd be nice, but it really doesn't matter in the end because at the end, if your message is pure, if your message is meant to teach others, well, then that's all what it's about, right? If someone can teach someone else the same exact content, remember, I've most likely learned it from someone else. The difference with my protocols is the way that I assimilate it, the way that I bring all practices together, and the way I try to put it into one step-by-step protocol that people can follow in the real world. And that's the big difference, is that you might have heard pieces before, but what we try to do is bring it all together. And I believe that's why we're successful. Enough about that. Let's get into the meal planning. And again, all of that does matter, because what I'm talking about is you're first balancing your current state. And then you're eventually, I want to let you know, your meal planning, the foods might be different. And the reason they might be different is because you might be different as well. You most likely will be, right? If you move from a kapha dominant state, basically a body type that is accumulating cellulite, holding a lot of water, feeling maybe a lot bloated, or they have really cold digestion, they've started to gain more weight, any number of those issues, right? Any number of those issues, lower metabolism, lower thyroid, whatever it might be. Well, once we balance that, you most likely don't have to be as careful with an anti-kapha based diet, if that makes sense. Okay. So then the same thing for the ectomorph, for the vata. If you're someone with a lot of catabolism, a lot of joint pain, a lot of, meaning more degenerative, not the pitta, which is inflammation, and you're really prone to losing weight, you can't gain weight no matter what you do. Okay. Well, and the mind's always racing, all of those things, you don't feel grounded. Well, once we help ground you, well, you might be able to add in some of the non-vata based foods, if that makes sense. And the last part is the pitta. The pitta, if you are inflamed, if you do have all of the skin rashes, if you have liver-based issues and the high cholesterol, if we move you away from that, again, you can eat a more balanced diet. What does that mean? Well, it means you can be more liberal with your food choices. Because when you're balanced, you're more flexible. When you're flexible, you can do things in life like miss a night of sleep or eat a meal that wasn't good for you, and it doesn't affect you. It took me a while to get there, but now I get that. I understand it. And so for me, although I don't love taking like a red-eye flight, I think it's really bad for my health. Well, I have to take one this upcoming weekend, or actually in a couple weekends from now. It's not my first choice, but it became the option if I wanted to get back to see my family on Saturday morning rather than missing a whole nother day. And that's what I decided was the best choice. But I know now that I have my health that I can then take that red eye. I won't get sick the next day like I used to before. I mean, I would have been set back probably 3 to 4 weeks back when I was sick. But now I'm going to be taking my immune boosting products. I'm going to be doing my specific intermittent fast. I'm going to be doing my daily nutritional support shakes and my daily fruit and vegetable blend, all the things to boost my immune system. And yes, I only get maybe a couple hours sleep at most, right? Because I'm taking an overnight flight, which is not ideal for anyone. But that is a choice that when you become balanced, you're able to do those specific things. But of course, I won't eat the airplane food. All right, so let's move now on to the meal planning. But remember, all of that pretext matters. You have to understand that I can give you, eat this, eat this, eat this. But if you don't understand why, it will not make sense. And when you stop listening to the podcast, then you won't know how to carry it over into the rest of your life. My goal for you is to carry this through life and you understand the foundation. Too many people now understand the surface level. They read an article, even if it's 2,000 words, and then all of a sudden it's like we're already at expert level, whatever it might be. Let's stay humble. Let's stay at the low level, always as a student. I am the perpetual student. If you want to bring something to my attention, I might question it, but it's simply because I want to understand your level of knowledge and I want to understand you explaining it to me. I want to learn. I want to know, and I want to know this at the deepest level possible so that when people bring me the most difficult cases, that I see it simply. I step back and I can see the whole picture. That's what it's all about. All right, let's get into it. Let's understand that the 3 body types are governed by 3 main things. Vata being catabolism. So when you understand the foods, you're going to understand that anabolic foods are going to balance catabolism. I'll be speaking about that in 1 minute. The pitta, understand that they are governed by metabolism, strong metabolism, and transformation, okay? They can accumulate body fat, they can accumulate muscle, or they can lose weight. They are a transformative body type, very unique body type, just like they all are. And the kapha body type is governed by anabolism, which means they are accumulators. The vatas break down and they basically use up all their stores very, very quickly, their minerals, their proteins, everything very, very quickly. The kapha, however, holds on and accumulates. So if you're a health practitioner or if you're understanding your own body type, you can understand that they would be more prone to the type 2 diabetes, to the higher cholesterol, the higher blood pressure. There are people that literally hold on to everything. They're anabolic. So great for gaining muscle, great for gaining weight in general, but poor at releasing things from the body. So of course, what are they going to want? Well, more of a catabolic diet. And you might say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you want catabolic? Well, it's only because the person has an anabolic-based state. The world is not about anabolism or catabolism. It's always about balance. It's about balance, and that is the only thing that matters. That's why there's no one exercise program for everyone. You could ask me like, hey, should someone be doing a vigorous workout? My answer is always going to be for who? Who is the person? For a Kapha body type? Absolutely. For a Vata body type? No chance. No chance. They'll be broken down and really exhausted within weeks to months maximum. Okay? So let's go over this right now. I want you to tune into the previous Cabral concepts on this, and those would be from episode 900, which is the start of our Ayurvedic podcast, 907, which is to discover your Ayurvedic body type, 914, which is the advanced body type for Ayurveda, and number 922, which is the celebrity body type matching, so you can get images of what body type that you may be in your balanced state, because they're kind of like at their peak state. And then 929, you have to go back and check that out because those were the individual foods. Today, you're going to understand the macro basis. You're going to look at the 30,000-foot overview because the foods don't matter if you don't get the quality, the type of food that matters the most, okay? So 929 should be the previous podcast for listening to this show. All right, let's talk about this. In the Rain Barrel Effect, which is my book on overall getting well, losing weight, and finally feeling alive again, which is the truth, so many people lack the zest and vitality in life that they want, that book, the protocol is exactly what we do in my practice. It's like literally step by step. But I also did a podcast number 859, stephencabral.com/859. So on that podcast, I spoke about why everyone should be moving to 3 meals per day. And really the only people that shouldn't be doing that are those people that are more unbalanced right now, okay? You have to live to balance. That's what it's all about. So those people who are more hypoglycemic would be the people that might want to do more than 3 meals per day. Or there's always contraindications if you're going a long time between lunch and dinner, because you might be having dinner late that night, not a typical occurrence, but maybe that night, then you might want a mid-afternoon snack. But go back to that show. I really break it down by the type of meals that you should be having and then why you should be moving to 3 meals per day, especially for the endomorph body type. Okay. During that as well, and in the Rain Barrel Effect, I went over that in my practice. Literally, I give you everything that I do in my practice, and I want you to really implement this. That's what it's all about. About half your plate should be veggies, all right? About 50% should be veggies. We'll talk about what type per body type in just a second. About 25% of that plate should be a starch. It could be a gluten-free grain if you prefer. It could be a root-based vegetable, or for those body types that are eliminating starch, like we do initially for weight loss, it could be sprouts, or it could be even more vegetables, okay? And then 25% of your plate should be protein. It can be vegan-based, it can be fish-based, or it could be meat-based. That's up to you, and depends on how you live your life and also your body type, which I'm going to be going over in one moment. Added to that meal would be about 1 to 2 to maybe 3 tablespoons of a healthy fat. Those healthy fats, in my book, are typically olive oil and avocado, but there are other fats as well. Those aren't the only ones, but those are certainly 2 with the most health benefits behind them. Again, there are others, but that's that. So it's a very simple meal plan template, okay? It's a much better template than what the Registered Dietary Allowance, the RDA, gives you right now. I can't even think of the specific name, but that's that. Like, certainly you don't want to be drinking a glass of milk with your meals. That's insane. That's how I grew up, and it's a very poor food combiner, very poor for your health, having that cold milk with a meal. So again, can that change? Absolutely. Absolutely. And it can be customized for you, but it's at least a good starting point. All right. So what would the Vata be? What would the Vata meal plan look like? Well, we always have to remember, think catabolism. This is someone with a difficulty gaining weight. This is a person that loses weight without trying. This is a more thinner joint, delicate-based body type. And when I say delicate, I never mean that in a derogatory standpoint. I mean it from the standpoint that the person moves towards more catabolic breakdown, more losing minerals and lower electrolytes and sometimes lower adrenal than anything else. But let's start by this one overarching theme that if you didn't exercise and you just kind of ate a normal day, would you lose weight without trying? And that's basically the Vata-based body type. There's more to it, and I gave you all the intricacies over the past 4 or so Ayurvedic podcasts. So what this body type needs, though, is they absolutely do need breakfast, and they typically need breakfast within 1 hour after waking. And it's different than the other body types, and the reason is this. These Vata-based types do not hold reserves as well. They are very good glucose burners. That means they're sugar burners. What does that mean? Well, it means that their body is really efficient. You're not going to see them typically with diabetes. They can actually eat a lot of carbs and a lot of sugar. I'm not talking about processed sugar, but I'm talking about fruit without gaining weight. Why? Because they have a very fast metabolism and they're a very good glucose oxidizer, sugar oxidizer. And so for them, you'll see them eat more carbs. And if you're an endomorph, you look at them and like, how are you eating all of that food and those carbs and not gaining weight? They're very frustrating to other people. Well, their body actually needs it. And that's because their nervous system and their brain are running very highly off glucose. And by the time they've gone from 7 at night to 7 in the morning for their 12-hour overnight fast, which is what 99% of the population should be doing, again, there's always a contraindication for 1%, they need to be refilling those stores. Why? Well, even overnight, they probably burn through a lot of their glucose, and that includes their liver glycogen stores. A lot of the Vata-based body types, they end up being hypoglycemic first thing in the morning, which is more what I tend towards as well. You can wake up with like a 70, right? If you take out your glucometer and you read your blood sugar, it could be quite low. And so this is important. You look at that and you should be eating about 60 minutes upon waking. And so that you start to give your nervous system, give your natural metabolism the fuel that it needs. And what does that mean? Well, breakfast should be light, right? Because Vatas do not have a very strong, robust digestive system. Even though they need a lot of food, they need a lot of calories, it has to be easy to digest foods. If you think Vata and you think easy to digest foods and you think starches, then you're on the right track. You're on the right track. Okay. They do great with a smoothie in the morning. I give that for all body types, but I'm going to tell you their smoothie. It should not be cold. All you do is you blend it up till it's a little bit warmer, or you simply do what I do, which is don't drink it for 20 minutes. Like it's very, very simple, right? Body temperature, room temperature, it starts to get a little warmer. And what I do is I simply have some oatmeal first. Now, you might not do well with oatmeal. You might do a sweet potato, warm sweet potato instead. A lot of people love that. Squash with some cinnamon on top. For the Vata body type, they could do a teaspoon of organic maple syrup, maybe a little bit more. Why? Because they're a glucose burner, and all those minerals from the maple syrup, they literally love it. It makes them feel phenomenal. It makes them feel literally phenomenal when they do that warm squash or sweet potato, or I do oatmeal. I prefer a gluten-free organic oatmeal because it's heavy. It makes me feel grounded and it's warm, and I like that warmth. And then I do my smoothie right afterwards, and that works for me, okay? I do it about 20 minutes afterwards. I take that to work. So that works great for me. I feel absolutely fantastic. It works for most Vatas as well. Okay, so then they're going to have their lunch and their dinner. What their lunch and dinner are going to look like is they're going to do their 50% veggies, but they should not be raw, and they should be easy to digest vegetables in general. Now, you can do cooked spinach, you can absolutely do cooked asparagus, but they're going to do, and I spoke about this last week, but they're going to do better with root vegetables, okay? The parsnips, the cooked carrots, the beets, the cooked celery, all of those root vegetables, it weighs down that light Vata, and they feel so great, okay? So then 25% of their meal may also be a starch. Now, they might do 1 to 2 cups of a starch. It just depends. Like, how will you know? Well, if you're a Vata and you typically lose weight, if you gain a half a pound to a pound that week, you're on the right track. You're now moving more towards an anabolic body rather than catabolic. So you can use the scale for, a good method, right? Rather than just being hypersensitive about it. Okay. So they can do 1 to 2 cups of a starch. You need to find out what works best for your body type, okay? And the starch can be whatever starch that you would like to enjoy, and ideally warm. So the protein should be easy to digest. Vatas do not do well with heavy or cold proteins as well. So you have to use that. Again, you can do vegan-based. I gave you vegan-based varieties last week, such as the hemp hearts and other, maybe like a black bean soup or split mung beans or something like that as well, warm. And then 1 to 2 tablespoons of a healthy fat, such as olive oil. Right away, that oil will help ground the Vata, right? So great meal right there. All right. But again, let me just go back. Vata, what did I state? root vegetables, starches, heavier foods, glucose-based foods, right? Fruit is absolutely fine for the Vata-based type, especially in that smoothie that we spoke about. Berries are still the greatest for everyone. But that right there, that diet would be the exact opposite of an endomorph, right? Of an endomorph. If you gave an endomorph that diet, what would happen? Well, they would gain weight. They would gain like 3 or 5 pounds in a week, and they'd be like, what are you doing to me? This is the exact opposite diet I should be having. And then I say, exactly, which is why we have to be so careful about the information that we get from a lot of people preaching Ayurveda right now. I never want to speak negatively, and I always want people to teach and keep teaching, but I want you to have the knowledge that we're talking about body type. We're talking about dosha as in the body type, not as in the mindset. You cannot do this for mindset right now. We're doing it for body, all right? Because if a kapha ate this meal plan, they would gain weight. They might end up with type 2 diabetes, not from whole foods, but of course, if they eat just a lot of glucose and sugar, it would be detrimental. But we're not. We were talking about the vata, okay? So vata is very different, right? It's the exact opposite. It's a kapha gaining diet. Like that's what it is. It's like you're promoting kapha by eating these foods. All right. Pitta's up next. Pitta, I want you to think about metabolism and a large and strong appetite. So what is one of the only things to slow down that big appetite? Not carbs, right? Not carbs. That'll go through too quickly. Protein. If you are hungry within an hour after eating a meal, 9 times out of 10, well, we'll say 8 times out of 10, the macro that was most likely too little was your protein, okay? And again, this is 250,000 appointments of data. It can be other things. I don't disagree with you. It could be a different macro, such as fats. It's almost never starch, but it's possible. Think protein. You didn't have enough protein to satisfy your digestion, right? Because you're already hungry. So what I want to look at it, I don't want to discount that. There are other reasons why, okay? And I agree with that. But what I want to say is a lot of times, whether it's vegan-based, I will tell you this though, Pittas and Vatas for sure, are least likely to thrive on a vegan-based diet because a vegan diet is more catabolic. It's more plant-based, and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't always work as well. Now, the Pitta, they can do okay on a vegan-based diet, but the problem is this, is that a lot of times the beans aren't as satisfying. The legumes, the chickpeas, the split mung beans, the hummus, hemp hearts, which is my favorite, aren't as satisfying, okay? But I'll give you a workaround, and I want to tell you about that in one moment. And the reason is that we just want to make sure that there's enough protein. Now, again, tune back into my previous podcast, which was called The Mounting Evidence Against Meat, that talked about the more protein that you eat in your diet, the more likely you will get cancer. And that's unbiased. I like protein, but I have to speak the truth. So that's just the way it is. Now, again, you need protein in your diet. Somewhere between 10 and 19% typically of your entire makeup of your diet is fine. The studies found that those over 19%, which definitely used to be me in my 20s, are more likely to get cancer. And I spoke about that on the podcast. If you want to know why, you'll simply go back to that podcast. Just go to stephencabral.com/podcasts for details on that as well. All right. That was called The Mounting Evidence Against Meat, I believe. The Pitta body type, and again, I want to make sure that I'm not going too far over, about 50% vegetables still, okay? That can be it can absolutely be more raw vegetables, especially in the warmer weather for the Pitta. The Pitta is governed by heat as well, fire, great metabolism. They can eat salads, and typically it does really well for them as well. They can eat cruciferous-based vegetables and typically do pretty well. For starches, anywhere between a half a cup to 1.5 cups for the Pitta. It just depends. If they lean more towards losing weight, they can add more starch. If they lean more towards gaining weight, well, they can go down a little bit less in starch, especially at dinner. And then protein, just make sure that it's 25% of that plate, potentially a little bit more. And that they, again, Pitta-based body type might do better with a little heavier protein, and absolutely add that 2 tablespoons of a healthy fat, especially an edible healthy fat that takes a little longer to break down, like avocado. A good half an avocado would be great, potentially even a full avocado for the Pitta, which would be 23 grams of fat approximately for that. All right. Pitta will often need an afternoon snack as well because of that larger appetite if they're going longer until dinner, right? They can't wait as long because they have a very strong appetite. So potentially some sprouted nuts, some cut up veggies and hummus could be fine, or some bean dip. A juice could be great for them, but maybe not satisfying. So they might do that vegetable-based juice with some nuts. Could be really, really great. Or just another smoothie with protein powder in that as well. And again, you can choose the type of protein that you feel is best for you. The Kapha meal plan. All right, the Kapha meal plan is this. Think anabolism. Think weight gain. Okay? So it's not just about weight gain. I hate to say that because remember, the Kapha body type, just like I showed you in the celebrity bodies and all that, can get in amazing shape, like amazing shape. We work with people in our practice that are endomorphs. We get them in amazing shape. Like that's the whole goal. It just means that your tendency is accumulation. The tendency is into higher blood sugar. It's into the potentially gaining weight. I'm just going to put it like that. The water retention, the cellulite, those types of things. Be more Kapha, okay? So think anabolic. So what we're thinking is, okay, well, we can't have as many any anabolic foods. What are anabolic foods? Well, it's mainly protein. Proteins are anabolic foods. Just like in Pitta, why do we do more protein? Well, it's the highest thermogenic food as well, which means it takes the longest to break down. Really great for that strong digestion. But it's also higher in amino acids. It's higher in producing hormones such as IGF-1, which is why there's more potential for cancer the more protein you eat, especially animal-based. Again, I'm not saying not to eat any animal-based protein. That's your choice. I will tell you, the more meat you eat, most likely the more chance for cancer. Now, will everyone get that? No, it does matter in your genes as well, but why take a chance? Like, why take the chance at all? So you don't need to overdo the protein. You can simply keep it to one meal per day of an animal-based or fish or eggs, whatever it might be. But let's get back to that Kapha. So if we know that they're already more anabolic, we're not going to load up on a lot of protein and we're not going to go heavy on fats, which are grounding and heavy, right? What are we going to do? Well, we're going to do a lot of produce. This didn't make sense to me when I was first studying overseas, but it did eventually. When we eat plant-based foods, they're 80 to 90% water. So that means they're high density in terms of nutrients, which is what the Kapha needs, but they're low density in terms of, or they're low calorie, right? High water content, which also means this, they flush a lot of the toxins because the Kapha accumulates a ton of toxins, but Kaphas also, this is really important too, they are going to easily build up mass, right? They're going to have a larger body if they keep overeating on the starches, things like that. So we want to go for a lot of the vegetables and even things like berries as well. And then the hot spices like cayenne, mustard seed, all of those are fantastic. So what do we know? Well, the Kapha body type is actually, in an ideal world, they are the ones that could go the 14 hours. They could go from 7 at night until like 9 in the morning, 10 in the morning for a little longer fast. Now, this does not always hold up for a 16-8 fast, and it certainly does not hold up for most women. It holds up better for men, but not for women. I've gone over this 100 times, and I'll keep going over in the future if you'd like, but it lowers thyroid. It lowers progesterone, and it can increase cortisol. Again, I've spoken about that in a previous podcast. Check it out. So I don't recommend that for women. I've seen these longer fasts on a daily basis not work out. But what I do see are 12-hour for everyone, 7 to 7. Again, you have to rebalance the body first before you can do that because you might be hypoglycemic. You might need something to eat before bed if you're hypoglycemic, adrenal-based fatigue, understood, right? We've talked about that. But a lot of the Kapha-based type definitely do go the 7 to 7 or maybe even 7 to 9 before your day really starts with a little bit more fat burning, right? Lower blood sugar because your blood sugar is going to go higher typically. Another big thing is use the glucometer. Use the thing that I've talked about you to test your blood sugar. Definitely only do 3 meals per day, okay? Mainly plant-based. You're not going to do as many root vegetables or starches, and the reason you're not going to is because those are going to be a little bit more glucose forming, or they're going to be higher in glucose, which can spike the blood sugar a little bit more. Instead, you're going to do lower glycemic vegetables. Now, you can still do some starch. Typically, we'll do that at lunch. We'll do that half a sweet potato or maybe a full sweet potato at lunch, maybe none at dinner, or maybe we'll do a half a sweet potato at dinner. Why? Because sweet potatoes and starches in general are also great for neurotransmitter production. They're great at calming the body and mind. They're great at producing serotonin. So they do matter, okay? And so my goal is to get the endomorph, the Kapha body type, to eat as much food and all these great things as possible, but not too much that it starts them gaining weight again or it spikes their blood sugar. So again, we do a period of time for about 21 days. You'll see it if you do the Dr. Cabral detox. It helps to reset those blood sugar and helps reset leptin, ghrelin levels, all those things, so that you can then see the real you. That's why we do the Dr. Cabral detox for everyone, right? Everyone does it seasonally. Ours is coming up September 10th as a group. you can just go to drcabraldetox.com to check that out. We'll be doing it as a group September 10th, but the Endomorph does great with the initial 21-day to reset. All right, they still need their protein, really, really important. It is a thermogenic-based food. You can choose the protein foods that I gave last week for the Kapha body type, and then 1 to 2 tablespoons maximum of fat per meal. So these keto-based diets obviously are not the best thing to do in the long term. Why? Because it makes you very carb insensitive. So if you go back to eating carbs in the future, you will gain weight, you will rebound in weight, plus it's going to lower those hormones to a degree you don't want, specifically leptin, ghrelin, and thyroid-based levels. Very, very important to look at this. Overall, those are the 3 body types. That's how we eat for our body type. The Kaphas can still do the smoothie in the morning with low glycemic berries. They'll typically, instead of doing 2 cups of fruit in the morning like the Vata, maybe even a little bit more, they're only going to do a half a cup to 1 cup of berries in the morning with their smoothie. The Pitta can do 1 cup to potentially 2 cups with the smoothie, depending on where their balance lies, if they're gaining weight or losing weight, and what their energy requirements need as well. And then for the Kapha or Endomorph in the morning, they're not going to do any additional starch. They can mix a cup of spinach, or they can put some cucumbers. They can put other things in their smoothie as well that taste absolutely delicious to keep them satiated and act as a natural diuretic. Last thing I'm going to leave you with is this, is remember that wherever you're at right now, you could be a Vata Kapha, predominantly Vata, but right now you may have gained a lot of weight. So you might take the 12 to 16 weeks to lose that weight, to lose it naturally, to keep it off permanently, and then I eat more of a balanced Vata-based diet. So remember, where you're at now does not necessarily predict your future. You need to get your dosha balanced. When it becomes balanced, then you'll be able to eat right for your specific body type. And the truth is you'll be able to maintain that for life. It's the gift that you should give yourself, because to understand yourself raises your self-awareness and allows you to accept yourself on a much deeper level. Truly, Ayurveda is about acceptance. It's about accepting and understanding our body type and truly believing and just owning who you are. And it's such a great thing, whether you're the Vata, the Kapha, or the Pitta, or most likely a combination of them, that you are literally perfect the way you are. You need to keep your body balanced for overall health and your body transformation goals. And that's it. You'll live the longest, healthiest life you can doing that. Thank you so much. I truly do appreciate you tuning in. If this was helpful, feel free to pass it along to anyone else you believe it could serve. I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.